Hello and welcome to Keen on Keys. As promised, here I have the Casio SA-46. It's, as far as I know, the model with the longest production time in the history of Casio keyboards. First released in 2010, but you can still buy it new for €49. And since there are quite a few around, chances are good that you find it pretty cheap on the used market. I bought this one for €10. The SA series has always been the bottom line of Casio's keyboard range. A few features have always been missing, like Casio chord or vibrato and sustain buttons, and the SA-46 is no exception. We have 32 mid-size keys with no touch response, 8-note polyphony, 100 tones, 50 rhythm patterns, 10 songs with a melody on-off button, 5 drum pads, and a tuning function. It has 2 speakers, but it's not a stereo keyboard. Both speakers produce the exact same signal. And the same goes for the headphone jack, which doubles as an output for an amplifier or audio interface. It runs on 6 AA batteries, or with 9.5 volts power supply, in opposite to older Casio keyboards with positive center. The build quality is quite okay. Of course, it's light, but it doesn't feel as if nothing's inside. The keys are playable and not too bad. There are 4 almost identical models existing. The SA-47, released the same year, is exactly the same keyboard. It only has a different colored bottom side. The slightly larger models SA-76 and 77, also from 2010, and the SA-78 released a year later, all have the same functions, tones, patterns and songs, but 44 keys and a larger display. And again, different colored bottom sides. These were the only SA models produced in the last 12 years. Casio seems to have gotten tired of re-releasing a model with a different color and number every 2 or 3 years, at least as far as mini keyboards are concerned. Well, but that's not entirely true, cause for a short time they produced a red version, named UK01, released 2018. But as far as I know, it was only available in Japan. I assume the SA-46 and 47 will be phased out of production soon, if they haven't already. Because this year Casio has launched 2 new, very similar looking models, the SA-50 and 51. I ordered one of these, and I will show it to you in one of my next videos. But let's have a look at the SA-46 first. I will clean it and have a quick look inside. The date stamp shows that this unit was produced in March 2015. This microcontroller runs the whole thing, the Holtec HD37B90. It contains, among other things, an 8-bit CPU, a polyphonic synthesizer, some ROM and RAM. All predecessors from the SA-1 released in 1989 up to the SA-45 and 75 from 2004 are based on the M6387 and therefore sound very similar, if not the same. Most of these models even share the exact set of tones. The SA-46, as well as the 47, 76, 77 and 78 are the first models that use a different tone generator. And they also have completely different presets, which are a bit more like the general MIDI standard. I've got a bunch of universal power supplies, but none of them can be set to 9.5 volts. Since it runs with 6 AA batteries, I tried the 9 volt setting, but that doesn't work, so I will have to use batteries. The speakers don't produce much bass, but they're okay. However, I will connect the output to my audio interface. The default tone is grand piano. It's made of 4 or 5 samples. You can clearly hear the transitions. To select another tone, use the plus and minus buttons or type in a number. The categories only give a rough overview, but all tones and also the patterns are listed in the manual. This is Calliope, which has a nice bit of noise at the beginning. You can switch tones while playing. This green button is to quickly select the grand piano or reed organ. Sounds pretty nice. If you look at the manual, it seems like the SA-47 has a harmonium instead of the reed organ. But that's not the case. It's exactly the same tone. I guess it's only mentioned in the manual because it's also printed on the control panel of the 47. As with all SA keyboards, we have nothing to change the sound. No vibrato or sustain, and unfortunately no octave switch. But some tones have a bit release. About half the tones and rhythms are quite usable, but instead of playing them one by one, I will make some short multi-track recordings. I really like the choir and voice tones. You can only get this from a sample-based keyboard. Of course, they don't sound realistic, but can pull you right back into the 80s. Most of the synth tones are quite nice too. My favorite is Raindrop, which sound even better in an arrangement. Has a good selection of bass tones. Unfortunately, they are all transposed down, so they are actually usable. But most of them are a bit noisy. Tone 72, which is called bass and lead, is also one of my favorites. But surprisingly, it's not the same on my other SA-46, which unfortunately is missing a key. That's why I bought a second one. This sounds more like an organ. And there are two other tones that are different. Synth Press 1. And Metal Pad. This model was produced in December 2017, while the other is, as we have seen, from 2015. It's a bit unusual that they changed some tones during production phase. But anyway, let's go on. There's no complete drum set that can be played over the entire keyboard. But we have 5 drum pads, which work quite well, and a few extra percussion tones. I try to include some effects sounds. These are the typical General MIDI sound effects, of very poor quality and hardly usable, except laser gun. We don't have an auto chord mode, but the last 10 of the 50 rhythm patterns have a fixed accompaniment. They are called free sessions. On earlier SA keyboards they are called super accompaniment. Most of them have a length of 4 bars. These free sessions are nice to have, but they get boring very soon. I would have preferred if they were all in the same key or combinable in some other way. My favorite is the last one. The default tempo is 120 BPM. It can be changed in 16 fairly large steps. For example, the difference between step 8 and 9 is 12 BPM. Finally, we have 10 built-in songs. AL means all songs are going to be played in a row. Use plus and minus or the numbers to select a song. To play along, you have to switch off the melody. You can change the tempo or melody tone if you like. All songs are quite short and easy to play. The usual selection: Jingle Bells, Yankee Doodle, Green Sleeves and so on. Except the last one. Good luck replaying. The keyboard turns itself off after 6 minutes if you don't use it. If you don't like that, you can hold down the tone button while turning it on. But that's it. I have to say I like the SA-46. It's not spectacular, but build quality and keys are okay. About half the tones and rhythms are usable, and it's fun to play. What I like about the tones is that they don't sound too realistic. They are cheesy, a bit stiff and noisy, but they are rarely harsh and have a certain charm and character. Going back to the question at the end of my last video about whether the SA-46 can beat the Yamaha PSS F30, I have to say, objectively, the F30 is the much better keyboard. It has a few more and better keys, a full accompaniment section with 2 nice chord modes, a sustain and octave switch, and a better overall sound quality. Although I don't like the reverb settings, which in my opinion make the sound worse, but the voices as such are much more realistic. However, on the other hand, I don't need realistic sounding instruments. I kind of prefer the more lo-fi sounding SA-46. It simply has a few more tones that put a smile on my face. It can't compete with its early predecessors, at least in terms of lo-fi. These are noisy as hell, but also have a lot more experimental or less conventional tones. It's a pity that Casio didn't take this further. I'm curious what the new models will offer. We will see next time. Finally, I should mention that there are a couple of keyboards not made by Casio that look very similar. The first is probably the most advanced. I've seen it labeled as Miles, Lookalikes or Kurzweil. It has 128 tones and rhythms, 30 songs, vibrato, sustain, rhythm volume, fill-in, metronome and a simple sequencer. But sound-wise, it doesn't seem to have anything exceptional or interesting, but could be reasonably decent. The second, which I've seen under the name Am Samnason in different colors, seems to be of slightly lower manufacturing and sound quality. It has 100 tones and rhythms, 10 songs and a couple of extra functions, and 37 instead of 32 keys. It doesn't seem to have a line output. The third type is sold under the name Canto, but I have also seen it without brand name. There are at least 10 different models in different colors and with a different number of tones and rhythms. Some with microphone and some have a built-in FM radio. There are also a couple of models that copy the larger SA-76, 77 and 78. This is the Canto HL70. As you can see, they even copied the look of the box in every detail. I bought it used for 10 euros, and I have to say that was 10 euros too much. It's one of the worst keyboards I've ever played on. It's really just the look that was copied. It has 37 keys, 4-note polyphony, 128 tones and rhythms, 5 songs, vibrato, sustain, fill-in, sync-start, a recorder, and the latest technological invention, a liquid aristal shower. But the overall build quality is very bad. It smells awful. The keys are almost unusable, and the sound is horrible. The speakers distort, even at lower volume settings, and it doesn't have a line output. The hardware also seems to have a few bugs. I wouldn't recommend this keyboard to anyone, especially not kids. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching.